5 things that happened after Jesus died. Number 1, there was an earthquake. There was a response from creation following the death of Jesus. We read that the earth shook and the rocks split. Nature itself was shaken by the death of the Son of God. Matthew states first that the earth trembled and the rocks split. This language implies that this is a significant earthly reaction to the divine events on the cross. Number 2, the tombs opened. Matthew then records an incident found in none of the other Gospels. The tombs were opened, and many bodies of the saints, God's people who had fallen asleep in death, were raised after their resurrection. They came out of the tombs, entered the holy city. Matthew chapter 27, verses 52 to 53. Earthquakes can damage tombs as they were carved in stone. The resurrection of the bodies can only be attributed to the direct action of God. This suggests that the earthquake was a sign of divine intervention. Considering Israel's geological position on a major seismic fault, earthquakes are not unusual. However, when combined with the opening of tombs, it becomes a significant proof of Jesus' crucifixion. Another earthquake will soon accompany an even more notable divine event, the resurrection of Jesus. Matthew's account of these events highlights Jesus' triumph over death through his sacrifice on the cross. Those resurrected are described as having fallen asleep, a common New Testament way of referring to deceased individuals whose eternal destiny is assured. The supernatural resurrection of these saints and their appearances in Jerusalem serve as a powerful testimony to Jesus' work on the cross and his subsequent resurrection. The term holy people likely refers to revered figures from the Old Testament and Israel's history, chosen to witness these miraculous events. Their appearance to people in Jerusalem shows that Jesus' work on the cross was successful. This connects to Paul's teaching that Jesus is the first to rise from the dead. In 1 Corinthians 15:20-23, Paul explains that Christ rose from the dead as the first of many to follow. He was the first to be resurrected with an immortal, incorruptible body, setting the stage for the resurrection of those who have died. Since death came through one man, the resurrection also comes through a man, Christ. Just as all die in Adam, all will be made alive in Christ. Christ is the first to rise, and then, at his coming, those who belong to him will also be resurrected with immortal bodies. The resurrection of these saints is a preview of what all believers can expect. Through Jesus' death, a new era has begun. On the day Jesus died, death was overcome, making eternal life possible. However, the Bible notes that the tombs were not opened, and the saints were not seen in Jerusalem until after Jesus was resurrected. It doesn't specify whether these resurrected individuals died again or went to heaven with Jesus. The death of the Son of God even affected nature. Preacher Charles Spurgeon remarked that while people's hearts were unmoved by Jesus' suffering, the rocks reacted by splitting apart. The rocks, though not the intended recipients of his sacrifice, were more responsive than the hearts of those he came to save. Matthew likely meant to show that the earthquake happened both on the day of Jesus' crucifixion and when he was revealed as risen. The power of his new life was so immense that it even brought some of the righteous dead back to life. This is one of the oddest parts of Matthew's gospel. Matthew doesn't give much detail, and no other sources mention this event. Number 3, the temple veil was torn in two. In Matthew chapter 27, verse 50-51, Jesus cried out loudly, and in his final moments gave up his spirit, fulfilling his Father's plan. At that moment, the veil of the temple, which separated the Holy of Holies from the rest of the temple, was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and rocks split. This veil was the only barrier between the sacred and the most sacred part of the temple, symbolizing the separation between God and man. Acts chapter 6 verses 7 tells us that many priests became believers in the early church. The torn veil might have shown them the significance of Jesus' work and helped spread the news. Hebrews chapter 9 verses 1-9 explains that the temple had a veil separating the Holy of Holies, where God's presence was, from the rest of the temple. Hebrews chapter 9 verses 1-3 describes that the first covenant had rules for worship and the earthly sanctuary, including a sacred tent with a lampstand and a table with consecrated bread in the holy place. Behind the second veil was the Holy of Holies. Exodus teaches that this heavy veil was made of blue, purple, scarlet material and twisted linen. We can enter the Holy of Holies through him. Hebrews chapter 10 verses 19-20 says, "We have the confidence to enter the most holy place by Jesus' blood through a new and living way opened by the veil, which is his body." This scene shows Jesus' body being torn for us, just as he tore the veil. Hebrews explains the deep meaning behind the veil being torn. The veil in the temple was a constant reminder that sin kept people from being in God's presence. The annual sin offering, in addition to the daily sacrifices, highlighted that sin couldn't be fully atoned for by animal sacrifices alone. Because of Jesus' sacrifice on the cross, the barriers between God and people were removed, allowing us to approach God with confidence. Hebrews chapter 4 verses 14-16 tells us that since we have a high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, we should hold firm to our faith. We have a high priest who understands our weaknesses, having been tempted in every way like us, but without sin. Therefore, we can approach God's throne with confidence to receive mercy and grace in our time of need. Jesus' body was torn, and so was the veil, symbolizing that we can now boldly approach God. At the moment of Christ's death, the heavy curtain in the temple was torn from top to bottom by an unseen force. The death of the Son of God was marked by massive natural disturbances, as if creation itself was affected by his death. Number 4, there was darkness over the entire land. In Matthew chapter 27, verse 45, from noon to 3 o'clock, there was thick darkness over the whole land. This event fulfilled Amos chapter 8, verse 9, which says that the Lord would make the sun set at noon and darken the earth in broad daylight. People often ask Christ for a sign from heaven, and now they had one, indicating their spiritual blindness. The darkness lasted from noon until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This unusual darkness occurred at noon, when the sun was at its brightest due to the full moon. It couldn't have been caused by an eclipse, as a full moon blocks the sun's light. This darkness was a direct intervention from God. In those times, people had limited astronomical knowledge. The sun seemed to withdraw its light, not wanting to witness the wicked acts. This darkness at such a crucial moment could symbolize several things. Historically, darkness often represented mourning or the death of notable figures. Both Gentile and Jewish audiences might have seen it as a cosmic sign marking the death of a king. Additionally, darkness was seen as a sign of God's judgment. The tombs opened, and many of God's people who had died were raised. After their resurrection, they went into Jerusalem and appeared to many, as noted in Matthew chapter 27, verses 52 to 53. Number 5, the soldier in charge of the execution realized Jesus was innocent. The centurion and his guards saw the earthquake and all that happened and were filled with fear and awe. They said, "Truly, this was the Son of God," according to Matthew chapter 27, verses 53 to 54. A centurion was responsible for ensuring the crucifixion was properly executed, usually commanding 100 soldiers. He was a seasoned soldier, known for his courage and skill, and was expected to be both cold and efficient. Despite his experience, the events of Jesus' crucifixion were so extraordinary that even this hardened Roman centurion recognized Jesus as the Son of God. This realization meant acknowledging Jesus' innocence. The centurion must have felt a mix of emotions upon realizing he had overseen the execution of an innocent man. These were not the words of a nervous rookie, but of an experienced veteran who had seen many men die. He knew the Jewish leaders condemned Jesus for blasphemy, and Pontius Pilate had confirmed this judgment. Yet the centurion rejected the condemnation and declared Jesus' true nature. Why? Because the evidence in favor of Christ was overwhelming. Despite overseeing many crucifixions, this one stood out. He likely saw various aspects of Jesus' arrest, trial, and crucifixion that made a strong impression. It might have been Jesus' response to the injustice he faced from his own people, or the dignity with which he endured the suffering imposed by the soldiers. The scriptures do not record Jesus' reaction to the crowd's demands, as seen in Mark chapter 15, verses 11 to 15, where the chief priests incited the crowd to ask for Barabbas, and Pilate questioned what to do with Jesus, whom they called the King of the Jews. The crowd shouted for Jesus to be crucified, and Pilate asked them why, questioning what evil he had done. They shouted even louder, demanding his crucifixion. Pilate, wanting to please the crowd, released Barabbas and had Jesus flogged before handing him over to be crucified. Jesus' concern was for the forgiveness of those who rejected him and the soldiers who crucified him, including the centurion. He prayed, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Luke chapter 23, verses 34 to 39. Despite the mockery from rulers and soldiers who taunted him with insults and vinegar, Jesus' focus remained on forgiveness rather than escape. There was an inscription above Jesus that read, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals crucified with him also mocked him, saying, "Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us." Meanwhile, Jesus' garments were divided by casting lots, and the soldiers kept watch to prevent any rescue attempts. The centurion was deeply shocked by the dramatic events of Christ's final hours, feeling a profound impact from what he witnessed. His fear was so intense it bordered on terror, showing the powerful effect of the cross and the love demonstrated there. Even a seasoned soldier could be moved from a hardened state to a profound realization. The saying, "the ground is level at the foot of the cross," means that everyone, regardless of status, finds equal ground there. The Centurions Declaration, "Truly, this was the Son of God," signifies a moment of deep recognition. We are encouraged to seek a deeper understanding of Christ, who loved us and gave himself for us. It's in intriguing to consider how the encounter with Jesus affected the soldiers' lives. Tradition holds that the centurion named Longinus became a devoted follower of Jesus and was martyred for his faith. While this is not confirmed, it shows that the truth of Jesus' sacrifice can profoundly affect individuals. The cross has the power to transform lives, as seen in the centurion's change from a Roman officer to a believer. Jesus' sacrifice fulfilled God's plan for redemption, despite the suffering he endured. Some might view this as a myth or a theological story, but these events provide a supernatural confirmation of the gospel's truth and the transformative power of Christ's love. If you found this content valuable, please support us with your subscription so you won't miss any future videos. Together we can spread understanding and enlightenment. Thank you for watching, and may God bless you.